marketing stories. Cool marketing tales. Unique original stories brought to you by Epic Conversions.com.
Hey, what is up, you guys? I hope you're doing well. I am Cam from epicconversions.com, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Cool Marketing Stories. This is episode 2 of our show, and today I have a very special guest. We're going to be talking to Ben Settle. Now, Ben is an author, he's a businessman, he's an entrepreneur, he owns his own publishing company. He releases high-ticket books, low-ticket books. He releases audio courses. You name it, he's probably done it. He has about 20 years of business experience under his belt, working for other people as a copywriter and working for himself as a business owner. It was a privilege to be able to sit down and talk to him. It was really cool. And you guys are getting ready to watch it. Now, that being said, I want to remind everybody the best place to get this interview, the best place to watch this interview is click the link in the description below and get signed up for Cool Marketing Stories, where you can get the productized version of this interview. And what I mean by that, and this is free, it doesn't cost any money, but it's a productized version. And what I mean by that, this interview has been broken up into segments, so it's easier to digest. The audio has been ripped, so you get a mastered audio version of this interview. You also get the full transcript of this interview. Now, this particular interview, it's about 60 pages, so it's a verifiable novella, basically. Ben gives a lot of great golden nuggets in this interview, a lot of cool insights to be taken from this one. So, anyways, be sure to click the link in the description below, sign up for Cool Marketing Stories. Not only will you get the productized version of this interview, but you'll get all the other productized versions of all the other interviews that I do for Cool Marketing Stories. So it's pretty awesome. Get signed up for that. And be sure to get over to Ben's site at bensettle.com. Get signed up for his stuff. He's got great stuff going on over there. I'm on his list. And I think what he's doing is fantastic. So anyways, that's all I got. Enjoy the interview. Peace now. Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Cam Jennings coming at you on behalf of epicconversions.com and Cool Marketing Stories. Got a very special guest with me today, Ben Settle. Ben, thanks so much for being on the show today, man. I appreciate you.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on and inviting me, and I hope we'll have a lot of fun. So all good.
Right on, man. I was trying to think about, I always try to start these interviews and kind of talk for a second about how I discovered the person I'm talking to. And with you, it's funny because I started following you probably about 8 or 9 months ago. I knew about you before, but it kind of reminds me of this rock band that I love this rock band, right? I don't know if you've heard of them or not. They're called Alter Bridge. Some people like them, some people don't. Some people never heard of them. Doesn't matter. The point is, I remember listening to Alter Bridge a long time ago, right? They came out with this record called Blackbird, and I thought it was a great record, but I didn't feel the need to listen to any more of their other records, and I let them go. And then many years later, I rediscovered them, and I've had to listen to all their music. They're like this super underrated band. They're so awesome. They're so cool, and I love their music. So I kind of relate you to that band a little bit because I've read several of your books, and I really like your material. I've studied your podcast, and I've gotten a lot out of it, man. So first, I want to say I appreciate all that you've done for the community and the marketing world. But yeah, I think probably 8 or 9 months ago, I'm the late kid to the party. The kids who learned about the cool band really, really late. And they're like, oh, why did I discover this band before? They're awesome. Anyways, yeah, that's how I discovered you probably about 8 or 9 months ago. I really started getting into your stuff. So let me jump right into this, man. Could you speak to those people who maybe they don't know about you a lot? a lot of people know about you, but for those who don't, can you speak on how you got your start online? How does someone go from working at like a 9-to-5 job to being a self-made Ben Settle, running his own publishing company and everything? Can you share that story a bit?
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't start out that way. I'd start like everybody else, not knowing anything about anything, and even if I knew nothing, that would be better than what I knew because I didn't know anything at the time. So, we all start white belt, right? It is what it is. So, I got into crazy business, kind of like a lot of people do. It's like the gateway drug to real business, which is MLM, and absolutely sucked at that. But I sucked so bad at it because I'm just not a people person. You really have to be one back in those days, at least. This is real late 90s, early 2000s, before, we were still using video cassettes and audio cassettes, right? So it's back in the day. And I was so bad at that. Well, from there, I did segue into direct response copywriting, which I'd found years earlier, but better late than never. And I started doing that just as a freelancer, mostly. And I made deals with a few people, not too many, where I would write the sales copy and just get a percentage of the sales that copy made. Got screwed over a lot, didn't really know what I was doing, but had a couple big wins. And from there, I just started doing regular freelancing. And one thing I hated about freelancing is that it didn't take long to realize that it's just a job. Now, it's a nice paying job. It's better than having a 9-to-5 job, but you're still having to filter your ideas through a bunch of idiots, and you're not really in control of your own destiny, and you're getting paid a pittance of what you probably could and should be getting paid. At least that was my thinking. And so I got inspired by several different marketers who I realized maybe they were doing client work, but they were still selling their own stuff, or they were just selling their own stuff. And probably the biggest influence was a guy named Matt Fury, the high king of email, I call him. And I remember this was probably around 2004, I got on his list. And I remember reading he was selling fitness stuff just by daily emails, which that alone was like taboo at the time, sending daily emails. Nobody did it. Everybody said that's the worst thing to do. If you ask any of the so-called gurus, I don't do that, send once a week, whatever. No, he's out there defying all this, sending these really fun to read, just really great emails. And he'd sit there and brag. He'd be like, I'm writing this email. I'm not even going to edit this email. I'm in China right now. I'm going to go ride elephants for the rest of the day. But, check out my combat conditioning book, whatever, And then he'd be in and out. And I thought, that's what I want. I'm sitting there working like a mule for a bunch of clients, getting paid peanuts. And there's guys like him who have figured this game out where he's his own client. And he just had his own little publishing company, fitness books. And so that was a big inspiration. A few years later, I started sort of transitioning into selling my own stuff plus client stuff. And then eventually I got completely out of selling client stuff. And now I am my own client, or what I like to call a clientless copywriter. I have no client. And I am the client. And I got to tell you, it's a lot more fun that way. But that's the very short version of it.
I love it, man. Yeah, and that's funny. And you've turned me on to several people that I didn't know about over these last 8 or 9 months, and Fury is one of them. So, and that's one thing about you. You're always kind of like sharing other people with people. You're like, yeah, man, this guy's awesome. I learned a lot from this guy. Check him out. You're always putting other people up on a pedestal, man. I think that's such a cool thing that you do. So max respect, dude. I appreciate that. I've learned a lot about other people just from following your teachings. So here's something for you. I remember you speaking at one point. I think it was in one of your podcast episodes. You were talking about this idea of a thermostat. You're talking about the idea of someone being at a certain level, and they can't get past that level because they need to raise their thermostat. And the whole thing was they couldn't get beyond that level because they would like self-sabotage themselves all the time. And I was just wondering, I don't know if you remember that or not, but can you speak on that concept a little bit about thermostat and how someone overcomes a situation like that?
Absolutely. I think it's very important. And I certainly did not originate this idea. It's probably been around for, who knows, hundreds of years for a while. But, Yeah, okay, so where I first heard it, so I guess maybe this was one of the benefits of being in that MLM originally. One of the people who was a co-owner of that company is a guy named Tom Big Al Schreider, who was actually a very, very savvy direct marketer. I didn't realize it when I was in it at the time. I wish I had. I would have followed more of his direct marketing stuff. But I remember listening to a talk he gave where he was talking about how people have this thermostat where that they're just comfortable at a certain income level. And psychologically, it makes them very uncomfortable to make anything more or less than that. So somebody who's just used to and comfortable making, let's say, $25,000 a year, if they lose their job, it won't take long for them to find a way to get back up to $25,000 a year because they're very uncomfortable making less than that. At the same time, if you were to give that guy a $50,000 a year raise, he would do something to sabotage himself to get back down to that. This is a trope in the sales world, by the way, where, I mean, you can hear story after story if you talk to enough salespeople, like, yeah, they all know that one guy who, no matter what, he makes his quota and then that's it. And you know what? He will do something to bungle every lead and job or opportunity he has after that to sell what he's selling at the end of the month because it's not comfortable for him. And this is the thing. This is why people win the lottery and they're actually more broke than when they started, right? And celebrities, they make a bunch of money, but they really weren't ready for it psychologically. They don't know how to handle it. And next thing you know, they're practically homeless, right? Like this is a thing. It's a very real thing. And it's not always that dramatic for everybody because most people are not coming into millions of dollars, but it is a thing. And it's something that people should be aware of because probably people listening to this right now who have been kind of spinning their wheels may realize it's not a talent thing, it's not a skill thing, it's not an education thing. It's the psychological discomfort thing. And there's a real easy way out of this. This is not something that somebody has to worry about. That's the good news. The good news is you're probably just hanging out with people who make the same amount of money as you do. And all you got to do, stop hanging out with them. All right. If they're family, you can still love them from a distance, right? I moved 2,000 miles away from my family. But I have conversations with some of them, and I can tell you, I'm just not thinking like them. They will obsess over $30. Put it this way. I have a family member who's come to visit me. God bless her soul. And she wants to save money. And I'm like, why don't you just FedEx all this stuff you want to bring for my son, instead of trying a carry-on, which is going to waste like an extra hour or not luggage. So all you need is a carry-on and save time and all this. And she's really stressing out about this. I said, why don't you just spend the $30, to just I'll FedEx, I'll pay for it. Well, no, she's not going to let me pay for it. It didn't occur to her. Well, yeah, I guess why don't I do that? Well, it's because people are just conditioned to think a certain way. And so what you want to do is read books and study and buy courses from whatever you got to do, people who are more successful than you are, where you want to be the one who looks at all that stuff and looks at these people and you start becoming uncomfortable where you're at because you're just constantly reading about these people. It's a good reason to read biographies, I think. And, this extends beyond just marketing and business, but success really, it sounds, quaint, but success really does leave clues. And I got to tell you, just start spending all of your time in person and when you're just learning from people more successful than you, and they will lift you up. And you don't have to think about it. It'll just happen. It's not going to happen overnight. But if you have the awareness that this is going on, it'll be a lot easier because you'll start catching yourself. You'll start catching yourself thinking like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. These guys don't think that way. Hold on, what's going on here? And you can see this all day long on social media, by the way. I was just talking to Stefania, my wife, about this. I'm like, God, I cannot believe how much people self-sabotage themselves, and it's because of this. They're just not comfortable psychologically making any more than what they are without cutting corners and doing something illegal, of course. But of course, that makes them worse off in the long run than they were too. So anyway, that's my thought on that.
That's a great answer, man. And it makes a lot of sense. I know I've been that person before. So that makes a lot of sense. That's really cool. let me move this forward a little bit. I've talked about your podcast that you've done. You've done 2 of them that I'm aware of. You got the Antipreneur show that you did, and then you got the bensettle.com podcast show that you did. And dude, I listened to both of them, and I'm actually listening to one of them again. I thought they were brilliant, and so they introduced me to a number of other awesome people, like Michael Sinoff, for example. I think you had Brian Kurtz on in your original podcast. You talked about Patrice O'Neill and the Black Phillip show. And several other, just awesome stuff, and so kind of just presenting different ways to look at old problems for me, and I'm always looking at, different ways to solve problems. So can you speak on like what got you into podcasting, and then what made you decide to kind of move away from it?
Yeah, so I got into it. I made the decision to have a podcast at the end of 2013. It was a long time ago. And I didn't know anything about podcasting. I didn't know what it would entail. I don't know. I was just writing out my goals for 2014. And I said, I would like to have a podcast. Maybe I was just bored or something. I don't know. And so I wrote it in the email. And then a longtime customer of mine, Jonathan Rivera, emailed me back and said, I could help you with that. Now, he was just starting out in the podcasting world too. So he didn't. I think I was like, I can't say this for sure, but I think I was like his guinea pig, right? Because he wanted to have his own podcast production studio and all that. And so I think I was like his first one. And so I said, okay, let's do this. And we did it. And the first few episodes were like an hour long. And we almost quit at that time because it was starting to become a chore. Like trying to, like imposing an hour of just talking. It's just like, God, it's like, man, this is. I'm like, John, I don't know about this, man. I'm like, I don't even look forward to this. And he's like, yeah, me neither. So then we shortened it to like 20 minutes per episode. And the problem was, it did great. I think it lasted 137 episodes. Some are I call lost episodes because they're actually part of a paid membership site later on. But did about 137. And the problem is I was just giving it way too much free information that people should be paying for. And it wasn't like me being greedy or anything. This was like everybody was telling me. It's like, Ben, I would absolutely pay for this, which is great. But the problem is, and as a marketer, I just know this is a fact of life and reality of life, and nobody ever really wants to hear it, but it's just true. People don't value what they pay for. Now, you've listened to it and you've gotten value out of it. It doesn't mean you won't, but people who pay for stuff just tend to get more out of it. I'm the same way as everybody else. I purposely do not let people send me free stuff. Like, friends, if they have something I want, I'm paying for it. In fact, there's this guy, Vance Morris, who teaches people how to like Disneyfy their business with the service side. And he sells this $3,500 course, or at least he used to, on that. And I wanted to sell it as an affiliate for him, but I wanted to go through it first. And I said, he goes, look, I'll send it to you. I said, no, I'm going to pay for this. He goes, well, I can at least give you the discount. No, I want to pay full price for it. And I got way more out of it as a result. So that's kind of my way of thinking. So enough episodes in, I started realizing, man, I am really giving away too much stuff. And that was how the first one went. The Ben Settle Show, Antipreneur Show went. And it went for a while. And then I switched it to a paid membership site. That was what it was going to be, as part of that, instead of something I just gave away for free. The problem is when I launched that, it was very, very successful, which doesn't sound like a problem, but it really was, because it was I had trained my list. Like, I'm a victim of my own circumstance. I'm not blaming my list. This is all on me. I've trained them to just so casually think that they can just, and they can just email me back if they want. I don't always get back to people unless they're like a customer or something, but that's not time. But people, as a membership site, things go wrong. And especially that weekend during the launch, like everything that could have went wrong with the technical side. And people are like, why? I haven't got my password. I'm not able to get access. And even though there was a link and a phone number to contact support, and literally every email they got, they thought, well, I'm going to ask Ben directly. And I had no idea. I had no clue. I have no idea how to get your freaking password. And I remember thinking, this sucks. I'm just, you know what? I'm ending the launch, and I ended the launch like early by like 2 emails. I said we're done because we were teaming up on this. I'm like, I'm not doing this because if it's this bad at 1,000 people, what's it going to be like at 10,000 people, right? And so that was why I ended that one. And then later that year, I said, I want to do a different one, a little more different, a little less hard how to, and a little more philosophical. And that was the bensettle.com one. And I did 100 episodes of that, and I just got bored of it. And the reality is that podcasts had peaked at that point anyway. They weren't special. Everyone had one suddenly. When I started the first one, they were still kind of a novelty. And, there's just, you used to get a lot more juice for the squeeze, for so to speak, from iTunes and all that. It's harder now. It's way harder now. And it's great for people who like doing it. I mean, I'm not anti-podcast at all,
Right.
but having a structured, produced podcast just doesn't really appeal to me at that point anymore. And so now I do them kind of impromptu Twitter spaces with one of my business partners once in a while, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. That's really cool. Man, you just touched on probably one of the core philosophies that I have learned from studying you these last 8 or 9. And I don't mean studying you like a science experiment or anything. I'm just saying, like reading your stuff and stuff, man. But yeah, this idea of, hey man, people don't respect what they don't pay for. Like that very simple philosophy, I've gotten a lot out of that, man, because it did require kind of a paradigm shift for me to kind of change my thinking. And that came from your ideas. So I appreciate that, man. And you're right. You're absolutely right. People don't respect what they don't pay for. I mean, yeah, I do. I have respected your podcast. I've gotten a lot out of them, but I don't think I think like the average person either. As a business person, I probably think a little bit differently. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't think people do respect what they don't pay for. It's true.
I mean, believe me, I'm just as guilty as anybody. And it's my favorite example of this when people ask about it, because sometimes people will be like, really? Because nobody wants to hear that, right? And I get it. Like, nobody wants to hear that. But for example, in 2003, so this is going way back, I was very broke copywriters in the early days. And Gary Halbert was selling his Boron Letters book for $100 or something like that. And I really wanted that book. And I don't know how I paid for it, but I somehow paid for it. And I mean, when I got it, it was like the greatest thing ever. $100 book, right? It's not even like, we're not talking thousands of dollars here. But when you're broke, that's a lot of money. And I got to tell you, I went through it I've gone through it a couple hundred times by now. There's no question. And I can absolutely trace hundreds of thousands, if not more dollars, to knowledge I've gained from that book. Had I waited a few years, I could have got it free on his website. It's up on his website free now, I think, or really cheap on Kindle. I guarantee you I got more value out of it than any of the people who got it for free, because it's not only did I pay for it, but it kind of hurt to pay for it, And, I was thinking about Gary Bencivenga's farewell DVDs. Now, he was the world's greatest living copywriter when he was in the game. I still consider him, the best. But, when he was in the game, he objectively was. Like, nobody would have argued with that, just by pure wins and losses and all that. And his course was $5,000, and you couldn't put it on a credit card at that time. You had to pay with the check, and you had to FedEx the check to him, right? And it took me a few years, like at least a couple of years to get to the point where I could buy it like that. And I remember thinking, I've gone through that thing 30, 40, 50 times. I actually lost count. I used to actually keep track of it just to do it. And I still go through it once a year to this day. And I got to tell you, if I'd gotten it free, there's no way I would have taken it that seriously. And I can trace, I consider that one of my top 2 courses to learn from, that and Matt Fury's original email course, which is the same thing. It was $1,000 when I bought it. Had I got it free, would it have had the impact? Absolutely not. So, there's something to be said about, it's Jim Camp, who was the world's greatest living negotiator in his day. He called it the 4 budgets of a negotiation. There's money, time, energy, and emotion. If the more you can get them to invest one or more of those 4 things into a negotiation, the more likely you're going to win. And that's all it is. The more you invest in something, time, money, energy, or emotion, probably the more you're going to get out of it.
That's profound, dude. And you know what? That's funny that you mentioned that, because Jim Camp's another person I learned about from you.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I picked up that course of his a few years ago. Yeah, it was really the one he did with Michael Sinoff, and it was
Oh yeah,
really
definitely.
great. Yeah, it was really great. But that's another thing that you brought up there that kind of become this core philosophy of mine that I didn't really think about it like this before. But this idea of gaining a deeper level of understanding the more times you go through something. Um,
Yeah.
I always treated movies like that. I'm the kind of guy. I love movies. I'm the kind of guy. I watch it. If I like a movie, I'll watch it more than once.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Um,
I'm the same way.
yeah, man. But like, I've never really, I don't know why, but I never really thought about books necessarily in courses quite in that way until I started listening to your stuff and reading your stuff. And it's made a big difference, man. You really do gain deeper levels of understanding going through this stuff a lot more than one time.
I
So
think you
that,
have to. I think I mean, nobody gets everything on the first time, right? And it's absolutely amazing to me that people will fight me on this, right? They'll absolutely fight. And I understand every book and you can't, nobody has that kind of time. But like the really good one, right? Like if you just pick the 10 best resources that you have and you said, I'm going to go through each one of them 10 times, the amount of depth you'll get that you'll pull out of it. And it's not like the information is different. It's just that we are different. Every day we change, we grow. Every piece of knowledge we gain from product one is going to somehow affect how we perceive the information in product number 9. And then you now do an iteration of that 10 times each. I mean, think about the compounding knowledge you're getting. Your brain is literally growing. The way I understand it, somebody can correct me on this, but the way I understand it, your brain is literally growing new neurological connections. And it's going to connect all that information together in ways you cannot possibly foresee. It'll come to you at times when you really need it. And you're like, where the hell did that come from? Idea.
it's true, man.
Where did that headline come from? Like, I don't remember ever learning this. And then you think, well, actually, I combined this thing I saw in a movie with this thing I learned in this marketing book, with this thing my friend said in 5th grade. And I'm telling you, it sounds weird, but this is really how it works. So I remember Gene Schwartz, absolutely. And Gene Schwartz used to say, look, just fill your head with as much information as you can that you find interesting. And I used to think, why? Right? Why? Like, I used to kind of wonder why he would say that if you're not even in those markets. Like, I understand if you're reading whatever market you're in, but he's like anything. Like, he'd read People magazine and stuff, right? Stuff that his market's not even like in. It's because it doesn't matter. It's just, you're just making all these little connections of data, and our brains will sift and sort it. And I mean, you'll come up with the coolest stuff that you didn't even think was possible once you start doing the work. Now, that's the key. Got to start writing, got to start creating ads and emails, whatever you're doing. You got to do the work every day. Do that, and I'm telling you, all this knowledge will start compounding on itself, connecting, intersecting, and I would say amplifying each other. Each piece will amplify itself upon something else, and it's a very exciting thing to think about once you get into it.
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. And you kind of reminded me of a book I'm reading right now. I wish the name of the author is escaping me, but it's called The Shallows. And he's talking all about how, like, the internet, he's kind of talking about all about how the internet affects our brains, kind of messes up our short-term memory. And
Yeah,
but in that book,
I feel it, man.
Yeah,
You can feel
yeah.
it. It definitely does.
I feel you, me too, man. I know what you mean. And he's talking about, but in that book, he's talking about plasticity and how, like, even at older ages, your brain can change. And he was even talking about like instances of, like, when people are doing one thing and not another thing, the brain, like, will physically change a little bit. It'll grow more in this area to become better at this task that they're spending a lot of time doing, and kind of take away resources from this other area where they're not even messing around with it at all. But that happens at all ages of life. Can you believe that?
No, it makes perfect sense, man. It's like it's the ultimate computer, right? Like, if an app's not being used, it just gets dormant and takes that power and routes it to whatever is being used. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, you're right, man. All right, so let me move on, dude. I know I appreciate you taking the time for this interview. I know you're a busy guy. Let me ask you about email for a minute. Do you have a philosophy when it comes to cleaning your email list? Where did it come from? How has it changed over the years?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I wish more people asked it and thought about it because everybody, even people I highly respect, the gold masters who are still around, have this notion that email is dead and that none of them are getting delivered and everything's in spam. And they're not wrong if you look at the average person using it. I mean, there's no question. But you could say that about any advertising media. You could say about direct mail, quite frankly. But if they don't have a clean list and everything. So my philosophy is the list really is the beating heart of a direct marketing driven business. And if you're using email, like I'm an email driven business, that email list is the beating heart. That's the thing that drives it all. It's like trying to have a car without an engine, right? It's not going to go anywhere if you don't have that. Well, I think the list is that. It's the engine. And so my ways of keeping them clean and curated and all that is, well, first of all, you can always do a list scrub. I mean, that's if someone's worried about their list not getting good response, it wouldn't hurt to do a good list scrubbing. And there's plenty of companies out there that do it. I mean, there's this place called Clean 13. It's not spelled, it's spelled like a K, I think KLEAN 13. I forget. A guy named Mark Goldman, very, very well respected guy in the email game, certainly runs it, and it's a very good, I highly recommend it for list scrubbing. I actually own an ESP, an email service provider, where when we take new clients in, the first thing we do, no matter who they are, is scrub it, unless it's a really small list or something, you have to worry about it, because we don't want dirty lists on our platform, right? So it's just that we take it very, very seriously, because we understand it ain't a numbers thing, it's quality. And so that's like the number one thing to do if you're really worried about your list. If it's not responsive, you think it's getting in spam and all that, probably it is. And probably there are a lot of bad addresses. And a good list scrubbing service can even tell you who's been pushing the spam button. I would just remove all of them. Anyone who's pushed the spam button, just get all of them, or all the catch-all addresses, like admin. They're probably not reading it. If you're a good copywriter, guarantee you're gonna have people on your list that have the word like swipe at. Just remove all that shit. They're not even looking. It's just sitting in a folder. It becomes gray mail. It's never engaged with it. They're not even reading it. It's a waste of your time. So that's like from a technical point. From another point, just mail every day. If you email your list every day, 7 days a week, you will automatically clean off the people who don't want to be there, which is good. Believe me, it's not bad to get opt-outs. It really isn't. If you got to take a market first versus marketing first approach, if you want to do things my way. And by that, I mean, it starts with the market, not with the marketing. And so if you really want to do right by your market, that's how you come at it. How can I do right? How can I serve my list? Well, there's people on your list who are just looky-loos. They're never going to buy from you. Maybe they don't really want to be there that badly. Whatever it is, maybe you're just not their cup of tea. Any number of reasons. Could be that you think they're on there. It could be they'll just be a pain in the ass customer for you. Like I want them to leave. And so you're doing them a favor, you're doing your a favor by just mailing daily. Good, not just not crap, obviously, but good. Have something to say worth hearing. Respect their time, and I can tell you, the cold people will leave. They'll leave on their own. They're like, yeah, this isn't for me. This is too many emails. I don't want to be here. Right? That just means they're not that interested in what you have to say, or they don't not that interested in you, and that is okay. They may come back someday. Don't worry about them. They will leave. They will not put spam. Usually, they realize it's not for them, and it's good. You've just done them a favor. You've done right by them.
No doubt.
And but then you got the hot people on your list too, right? The hot people, they're like, I can't get enough of this guy, and you'd be surprised. I get people get mad if they think I skipped a day or something. I haven't skipped a day in I don't know how years, but sometimes you wind up in spam or something. They don't see it or whatever, and then you got the worst of all of them, the lukewarm people. Now, this is very important. So I draw my inspiration for how to deal with the lukewarm people from the book of Revelation, chapter 3. We're going to get hard. This isn't Old Testament, God, but it's pretty close to it. As far as how you treat these guys. And there's this little partner where Jesus is talking to 7 churches. He's displeased with 5 of them. He's only pleased with 2 of them. One of the ones he's displeased with, he says, look, you guys are doing some good stuff, but let me tell you, you're lukewarm. I would rather you be hot or cold, but you're lukewarm. I'm going to spew you out, vomit you out. That is how I treat the lukewarm people on my list. So how do you do that? Because the lukewarm people are the ones who will push spam on you. They'll be your trolls, your reply guys, the snarky drive-by people. We all get them. I mean, you're never going to not have them. But what you can do is make life a little uncomfortable for them. And so what I do is by mailing daily. You don't have to do anything different than what I already said. Just mail daily, and you will force the lukewarm people to become hot or cold. Some of them will heat up, by the way. Some of them you will get by sheer will. They'll be like, okay, this guy has to have, nobody's mailing me, 30 days in a row with something interesting. Okay, maybe I misjudged this guy. Not all the time, but some of them will do that. Most of them will just turn cold and they'll leave. And I'm telling you, that has been probably the number one list curation piece of advice I could ever pass on to anyone is mail every day, and it'll get rid of the cold people, turn on the hot people, and it'll force the lukewarm people to ante up to go hot or cold, one way or the other. And I'm telling you, it works almost like magic if you do
That's
it right.
awesome. That's awesome, man. I appreciate that insightful answer, dude. That makes a lot of sense. You're talking about that, and it reminded me of this joker on my list who was trying to send me. He was taking swipe files of my emails and was like feeding them into ChatGPT and was like trying to send me these ChatGPT. Hey man, look what I got ChatGPT to write like you and stuff, like that.
Boy.
Like,
can you imagine what that looked like too? It probably looked nothing like what you actually write, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, I didn't. But it was kind of like I didn't even know what to think. I was like, man, does this guy think I really want to be like turned into some kind of robot or something? Like, am I supposed to be like flattered by that or something?
Now you gotta make fun. When that happens, just mock the hell out of it because it is worthy of being mocked.
So. Yeah, that's funny, man. And you're right. It's like you got the hot, you got the cold, you got the lukewarm. Get them out of the middle.
Well, I just yesterday someone told me about a Ben Settle bot on Telegram. I don't even use Telegram, and he showed it to me. I'm like, this doesn't sound, and this isn't just me, egoing. I'm telling you, there's nobody could read this thing who's on my list would think it came from me. The AI is none of it's all fake. It is absolutely just a show, a sham. It's a bubble that when this thing pops, it's going to be absolutely glorious, and I'll be there to watch it like fireworks when 100%. This thing finally pops. I can't wait. I think it's going to rival the .com bust in the early 2000s. We'll see.
I hope so, man. Okay, so cool. This is awesome. One thing about you that I think is really interesting, your email players, a print newsletter, and the irony is not lost on me that this is a print newsletter that focuses on email marketing, which is, it's a digital marketer's playground generally that I've known it to be. But, I heard you mention in the past, when you started your email players, some of your peers told you it wasn't a great idea to do a print newsletter for the topic of email marketing. And I just kind of wonder if you could speak on the origin of that newsletter a bit and, why you decided to do it, even though, respected professionals and people around you told you it wasn't that great of an idea.
Yeah, I was actually in 2 mastermind groups at the time. And when I say mastermind, just informal over the phone, not like go meet up anywhere type stuff. And highly respect everybody in both groups. And there was one in each that said, one guy said, this is a disconnect. Why would you do this? And I'm not going to name him because I think he probably didn't remember he said it. And it doesn't really matter. Still a good guy. I still like the guy. Don't get me wrong. And the other guy I will name because he has publicly said it, and that is Doberman Dan Gallagher. And he to this day, we're going on 13 years, and he still brings it up and says, Ben, you were right. Man, I should have listened. So I think he uses it as a teaching lesson. Now I've learned a lot more from Dan than he's ever learned from me. So I say that with all respect. But okay, so I prefer print stuff, right? Books, newsletters. I don't like digitally delivered stuff, except when I have a really fast, hot problem or something I want to find out real quick. So if I know there was a quote in a 400-page book that I really want to use, I'll just buy the damn Kindle book. look it up and use it. Okay, so it has its uses. Don't get me wrong, but me personally, I like physical, and I am a big believer. So you mentioned Patrice O'Neill earlier.
Yeah.
He had some interesting philosophy that when it comes to women, that he was, I'm not endorsing the guy's lifestyle or anything, because I enough said on that. But I will I will say this: a lot of what he taught directly is applicable to direct marketing in ways that absolutely to this day astounds me. And one of the things he used to say was, you know, happiness trickles down from the man, not from the woman. He would say that. And I agree with that totally. I am not going to chase Stefania's emotions from here to Christmas every day. No, I've told her my happiness. Look, I'm quoting Patrice O'Neill to her. I'm like, look, my happiness comes first. All right. I'll be the rock. You be the storm. Nobody's chasing a storm. The rock is here. It's all good. And she loves that, by the way. And so this won't piss her off. It might piss any women listeners off. But my point is, it's the same thing I have found in business. My happiness trickles down to my customers. If I'm miserable using a format that I hate or suck at, like, for example, video, I'm just not good at video. Believe me, I wish I was good at video, because I would do video and I would probably make 3 times as much money. I would have none of the overhead and any of that stuff. And, there's a bigger audience. People love video. I'm not saying it's a bad media at all. I wish I was into it. I really do. I wish I was a video guy. I'm just not. I don't even have the patience to use like iMovie to like edit this stuff. I'm so bad with it. And I'm a little better with audio, but not quite. I even outsource editing of audio and stuff. I just can't be bothered. I like writing. I don't know. I'm a writer. And so my whole thought is, I'm going to give people offers in a way I like it. Now, because otherwise it's not sustainable for me. And if it's not sustainable for me, what's the point, right? Like, there's no, if I'm going to hate doing it, it's going to come through. And I'll attract more like-minded people. So to me, none of this is really controversial. And yet somehow it is these days. I don't know why. But to me, it's just, Dan Kennedy has been talking about this for decades. Build your business to suit your preferences. And so that's why I did that. Now, I had a print newsletter. Let me turn back the clock here to 2009. All right, we'll go back to that. I sold my first subscription offer, which was it was just an interview of the month. Was really all it was. This is all it was. I would interview an expert that I was learning a lot from about persuasion and marketing, selling, and all that. And then I would send that a CD. That tells you how far back this is going. A CD and a printed transcript, right? That was the business model. And you know what? It lasted 1 month before I ended it. And it was very successful for what it was, for my list. I mean, it was fine. I even had one guy, like, he lived over in Israel, I think. He was like threatening to sue me because I ended it. Which is really strange, by the way. It's like, dude, I'm like, I don't understand. Well, first of all, you're not even in my country. But second of all, why do you, like, would you think it was going to last forever anyway? It's like, I don't have the right to end this thing. And so he took it really personally that I ended it. It wasn't that good. I mean, geez. But I didn't like it because I didn't like the format, right? It was me having to interview people. I just didn't want to do it. And so I scrapped it. This was like October, I think, 2009. And I said, I like news. I'm going to do a print newsletter. So that next February, so a few months later, I launched what was called the Crypto Marketing Newsletter, which is very generalized marketing advice. And it was like $27 a month. It never really cracked 120 subscribers. Barely, back then there wasn't this crazy inflation with shipping or anything. So I made a modest profit, but it was a lot more fun than doing everything else. But I remember sometime like a year or two later, I created this course for email marketing because I'd been playing with a lot of ideas. I've been kind of pioneering my own methodologies, all rooted in stuff I've learned from much, smarter people than me, like Matt Fury, for example, and Jim Camp was a big influence on me and all that. But I was creating my own sort of methodology that works for me and my personality, based all firmly rooted in very strong fundamentals. And this course was extremely successful. But the problem was, I realized I'm constantly updating this thing because I'm learning new things every day when I send an email out. And I was also learning that some of the things I was doing only worked for me and not necessarily for other people. And so I must have edited the dang stupid course like 2 or 3 times. Like once a month, I was re-editing. I'm like, this isn't sustainable either. I'm like, what? And I thought, well, why don't I just do it as a newsletter? I don't know why it took me that long to figure it out. And so that's what became Email Players in 2011. And everybody was saying, no, you can't do it. Not just those guys in the mastermind, but I had a lot of people say, it doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. But when it launched, it did really well. I think I'm the first one to ever have done a print newsletter about email. I know Matt Fury did one about internet marketing as a whole, and there were issues about email. Certainly that had an influence on me that I knew it could work. But it was funny because at the time, this was 2011, people really didn't think it would work. It didn't make sense to a lot of people. And nobody really copied me until a few years. I think it took about 7 or 8 years later when suddenly I started seeing people come up with a print newsletter about email. And to them, I say you're welcome. I was happy to pioneer that. But but either way, the point is that's the story behind Email Players. And you know what? Again, it's the format I like. Is it the ideal format? Not really. Although really, it stopped being just about email years ago. I mean, everything in it can be applied to email. Certainly, it's stuff I use in email. But I realized, I think around 2019, I made a big change. I'm like, this thing needs to become it's changing. You know, you can only write about subject lines so many times before it's like, okay, I'm not sure I can teach too much more about subject lines. So then it started getting a little bit more principle and strategical oriented and that sort of philosophical. And now it takes email and just augments it much higher. Even if somebody's not that good at email, they can still use it. And if they're not even using email, I've got people who don't even use email that subscribe because they apply it to other stuff like YouTube and social media and all that. It became much more than just about email. But I'm an email guy first and foremost, so that's what it is. But that's the story behind that.
That's awesome, dude. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that that story is cool because it was reminding me of I was reading about Dan Kennedy, how he still makes people fax him. And
yeah,
I'm just like, it's amazing. It's amazing to me, man. Like, no, we're gonna do it. Like, I don't care what's happening in the world. I don't care how the world is moving on, and all. You know, you guys aren't going to change my narrative for how I do things. Like, I'm going to continue to do things the way I want to do them. It's like there's a degree of courage there to say, no, this is how I'm doing it. You guys do whatever you want to do, but if you want to deal with me, you're going to have to deal with me in this way.
Yeah,
so I think that's pretty awesome.
It trickles down from you, right? Like if you were doing this interview in a way you didn't like doing it, it wouldn't be as fun for you, right?
Yeah.
It wouldn't. And then that would trickle down to me. I'd be like, "Why? There's no energy on this thing. Like we're just sitting here, going through the motions." But that's not what happens because you like this format, presumably, right? And it's good.
Right on.
And that's how. And to me, that's the ultimate thing. It's there. Okay, so I wrote about this recently, and this is one of the reasons I like to read biographical things. So I was reading about the actor Gary Cooper. He was a very big name back in the day. Not necessarily the best actor, by the way. I mean, it depends who you ask. I've been reading these old backstory screenwriter interviews, and people either liked him or they really hated him. They either thought he was a poser or they thought he was brilliant, which, by the way, is a testament to his ability to build a personal brand. But he was director Henry Hathaway, who did a lot of westerns and all that, was directing him in some movies. And the script called for Gary Cooper's character to pick a saddle off the wall. It was just hanging on the wall. Okay, you go over there and take it off the wall. That's what the script said. And apparently during rehearsals, Gary Cooper took like an hour and a half, which normally wouldn't have taken more than like 10 minutes, just picking it up in different ways, right? And like, well, let me try this again. And Henry Hathaway's like, what is wrong with you? Just pick up the saddle, man. This is not, this isn't your close-up. Just pick the saddle up so you can move on to the next thing. And he goes, I have to do it my way. Gary Cooper. And then apparently he picked it up in a way that only he would ever think to do. And the director was like, you know what? That son of a bitch, nobody would have done it the way he did it. And that kind of thing makes a huge difference in the grand tapestry of everything, right? And so there's a lesson there. Whatever you're going to do, whatever way, do it your way. Not my way, not Cam's way, not anyway, your way. And everybody has a way. And at first you don't know what your way is, and that's okay. You just, you do what you know works, you follow the fundamentals of whatever you're learning, and you stick to it. But eventually your way will emerge because you'll start getting irritated why nobody does it a certain way, and you're like, well, how come no one does it this way? Well, I want to do it this way, And it's a very fascinating thing. Takes a few years sometimes, but when it happens, it's kind of like Gary Halbert taught his son in the boron letters we talked about earlier about writing copies. Like, write these world-class sales letters out in your own handwriting over and over and over so you get a feel for what it's like to write world-class copy. He goes, you'll sound like these guys at first when you write your ads, but eventually your own peculiarities will emerge. And he's absolutely right about that. I think anyone who's been in the game long enough knows that. It is absolutely a fact.
That's smart, dude. That's very true, very smart. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Okay, so very cool. I got a few more questions for you. I know I don't want to take up too much of your time today. So look, I've read several of your books. Okay, I'm a big fan. I actually got this goal to read them all. I am a slow reader. I'm a big dumb animal, so I'll get there eventually. But I'm curious if you could speak on some of your favorite books that you have written, and what they mean to you.
Well, my favorite book, okay, the one that I'm most proud of, just from an impact point, it also probably my highest selling one. I don't know, probably my second highest selling one actually, is called El Bembo Press, which is it's all about the book and newsletter side of how I do things. It doesn't teach, how to write or anything like that. It's just how I put it all together, both logistically and philosophically, how I approach the publishing side. And the reason I'm most proud of that is because it's gotten the testimonials that, are not easy to get and that I did not even seek out. So like Russell Brunson, for example, told me, because he bought all the rights to Dan Kennedy's old products, and he went through El Bembo Press on a plane, and he wrote me a testimonial from the plane. Like, I didn't even know he bought the book. And he's like, I think you've just saved me from making a bunch of mistakes relaunching Dan Kennedy's newsletter. And he goes, I think you saved his legacy. Something like that, right? I was like, really?
That's awesome.
So of course I said, can I use that as a testimonial? So that's one. And then I got another one from this client I used to work for named Captain Chris Pizzo, who at the time had the biggest self-defense info publishing company in the world. Like, he was the top guy, and he'd seen it all. I learned a lot from him too, and he was like, this is, I don't remember what he said, but I mean, it's very flattering, let's put it that way. I just haven't looked at it in a while. And then most recently, as of like a week ago, I got a testimonial from Dan Kennedy himself. I was like, really?
That's
he
awesome.
said it was not. He said it's not only impressive, but he said there's very few people that kind of show you exactly what they do to build a successful info publishing business, because most people are not really as successful as they say they are. There's BS. And he named some names like Ted Nicholas and all that. And he goes, Ben, your book is better than all theirs. And I said, holy shit. I'm like, I wasn't seeking it out, by the way. I sent it to him because he mentioned me at a talk last month about how to sell high ticket books, like expensive books. And I just sent him a fax saying, hey, I appreciate you mentioning me. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And we got the back and forth thing. And I said, I would like to send you an autographed copy of it, because I don't think this book would exist without you. And, you can see what one of these books looks like. And I did. And I don't even think he took, it took like 2 weeks. So I heard back, and he was, you're a speed reader. And that's when he got back to me. So just from a pure ego point of view, that one. But my personal favorite is called Mark Auteur. So it's like I combined the word marketer with an auteur, like a film auteur. And that was, very esoteric book. I did not expect more than like 20 copies to sell when I launched it, because it's about the visual and design side of direct marketing. And I got to tell you, nobody has ever asked me to do a book or teaching or anything about the visual and design. I'm like not the visual design guy. But then I thought about it. I'm like, well, actually I am. I don't personally do the designs. I hire that out to people who are brilliant, because I don't even know how to use the free Apple preview image editors. That's about the I don't know how to use Photoshop. I don't need to, because I'm like the auteur director. Like, he doesn't know how to do everything on set. He just has the vision. And I realized, holy crap, I actually have a methodology and I didn't even realize it for 20 years. And so I wrote it. It's fully illustrated. It's, just from like my personal favorite one, that would be, and it's kind of like the opposite side of the same coin as a Bemble Press in a lot of ways. And so that's my personal favorite. And, it sold a lot better than I thought. I think when it launched, I sold almost 100 copies, which is like amazing to me. I thought I'd been happy with like 10 or 20. But that just goes to show, sometimes when you build the right kind of customer base and you do right by them, and you take that market first versus marketing first, and you're like, how can I serve these people? You'll start gathering a customer base that will buy just because you're selling it, whatever it is. And as a copywriter, it almost pisses you off. You're like, well, dude, I spent all this time writing this ad. You didn't even read it. And I know this because like the second the first email goes out, there's a sale within like 5 minutes. I'm like, you did not read this 20-page sales letter in 5 minutes. Just stop. But you know what? I cry all the way to the bank with that. I'll just say that.
Crying all the way to the bank. Yeah, I like that. I don't think I read the sales letter too closely for Email Bastard when you guys put that out. I thought it was really good too, man. It was really cool.
Yeah, that was I love those little $20 offers because just from that's a copywriter's playground, because you can come up when you have all these little teasers you can write, and it's so easy to buy. It's $20, right? So there's no price objection. And it's just a fun experience for everybody. Like, people love buying from that if you give them a good offer. Obviously, it's a good product. But if it's a good, fun buying experience, where you're just teasing the living crap out of them while they're reading it, and they get it, and it's actually better than what they thought, people love that. And it's fun to deliver. It's absolutely fun as a marketer to create stuff like that too. And it's not like you make millions of dollars off a little $20 offer. It's not what it's about. It's just the experience and enjoyment of people have when they buy something they want. And there's something about that. Like, to watch the experience, the joy people have. Forget the present. It's like, this is going off a little bit, a little tangent, but I think this is important. This is a very interesting thought. I think Earl Nightingale said, I don't remember who I heard this from, but I was like, wow, a lot of things clicked to me. It's like the experience and the anticipation of something is really where the joy is in buying something. It's not in the offer. And he was like, think about when you were a kid at Christmas, and for 2 weeks you're looking at the tree and you're looking at the presents, and you're shaking the boxes and you're trying to figure out what the hell this thing is with your name on it. And are there any other places they might be hiding stuff? And it's like this game of cat and mouse as a kid. And every day is exciting, trying to figure this out. And the anticipation is, you can't even sleep the night before Christmas. And then it comes, and then when you open the present, you have that 2 seconds of joy, and it's just gone. It's all gone. You don't care anymore. It was like the real fun was in the experience of the buying and the waiting and the investment of, well, it could go back to Jim Camp, the time, money, energy, and emotion, quite frankly, right? There's so much more to this whole marketing and selling and buying process, I think, that gets lost in all the books just telling you to lob benefits at people and all that. There's an experience there. And I don't know, this is anecdotal, I'm just using myself as an example. That's how I am. I love it when I'm part of this olive oil club. Gary Pennsylvania, by the way, he's part owner of an olive oil club. I think it's called the Fresh Pressed Olive Oil Club. And if you like olive oil, it's like gourmet olive. Like, he's a foodie, and really good sales letter. Like, it's worth going there to read the sales letter. You'll probably end up buying a bunch of olive oil, like I did. But it's so good that I anticipate my 3 bottles coming in every 3 months. There's an experience to the buying and the waiting, and then you get it and you open it up, and there's like a newsletter about olive oil that you get, and there's this experience attached to it. And I think there's a lot more to all this buying and selling and marketing than just what we're seeing in books and courses, right? And my analogy for this, and this might anger Tolkien fans, but I know it'll anger the Tolkien snobs, right? Now, I love Tolkien. I grew up reading Lord of the Rings like every day in middle school. I would sit there in study halls reading. I know the books backwards and forwards. And I understand why people hate the Hobbit movies. I get it. Personally, I didn't mind them. You know, I enjoyed them. But there's a part in the very first Hobbit movie where Gandalf tells Bilbo, the world is not in your books and maps. It's out there, beyond the borders of the Shire. I.e., you're only going to learn so much from a book and a map. The experience is just, it's a whole different thing. And you're never going to get it sitting inside just reading. And I think as marketers, we should think about that. What's the experience we can give? What is the experience we can give them beyond the borders of the Shire, beyond just benefits? And I think that's something to think about.
That's awesome, dude. And it's funny because, yeah, it does go beyond benefit. I mean, it has to, because, I mean, like I learned about damaging admission reading Ultimate Sales Letter, right? But I learned about making the skeleton dance from studying your stuff. And it's kind of like damaging admission amplified. You know what I mean?
That's from Barry Maher. He has a book called, I'm looking right at it. It's called No Lie, Truth is the Ultimate Sales Tool. Highly recommend that book. That book is amazing. But go ahead. I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's, yeah. What's this like? How would making the skeleton dance work if it was all about just benefits? You know?
Yeah, it's not. There's an experience. There's an expectation. There's, you know, and then if anybody studies Sean D'Souza stuff, and he's an absolutely brilliant guy, he takes it much farther. He teaches the consumption side of the process, which, you know, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But if you think about it, if they don't consume product A, they're probably never going to buy product B from you. And that's another reason, you know, charging for something is important, because are you really helping someone if you just give them something free that they never use? Or if they pay for it, there's an experience, there's an expectation, there's an anticipation, all the stuff we talked about, and then they get it, and then they go through it, and then, oh my God, this is awesome. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what the offer is. What else can I get, right? And now you've got them on a journey, and they're not even probably looking at your competition anymore, because all they're doing is the same old going through the motions, phoning everything in like they've been taught to do. Because, right, you know, unfortunately, the hardcore marketing mercenaries of old, you know, it's the fun stuff to teach is that, the mercenary stuff.
Right.
But but it's not really the whole process. It's going back to Jim Camp. Like, okay, tactics will get you invited to the table, but they won't get you invited back. You know, where consumption comes. So, yeah, there's just, like I said, I think it all comes down to a market first versus marketing first. You need both, but there's this guy, this copywriter, he's retired now, but one of the most brilliant copywriters alive today. His name is Doug Deanna, and many years ago I had a chance to interview him. It was like 2007, I interviewed him. And I remember asking him about his philosophy that he calls the bridge to the breakthrough, which is copywriting is not about creating a bridge from your product to your prospect. It's about creating a bridge from your prospect to your product. It starts with them. And, you know, this all sounds like very basic stuff, but how many people really do it? Steve Jobs was talking about this too. He's like, you know, you got to start with the customer and then work back to the product. And, you know, this is all marketing 101, but it gets lost somewhere. It gets lost somewhere with just cool benefits and screaming headlines and, you know, slick turns of phrases and bullet points and all that stuff's good. I'm not, yeah, you know, ninja hacks. And, you know, the basics are important, right? The headline, bullets, headline, story, bullets, close, all that stuff, very important. I'm not saying people shouldn't learn it, but it's one small part of it should be one small thread in a very big tapestry that is a lifetime customer's experience with you. And if you think in these bigger terms, I think you'll find you approach marketing much differently than everybody else.
That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to let me move on, man. I don't want to take up too much of your time here. Email players. I think you might have already answered this, and if you did, forgive me. But if you're going to start it today, would it still be a print newsletter, or do you think you do it in a different way?
If I was starting it today, I would not do a print newsletter. I love print newsletters, but the economics of it are becoming much, much more difficult. I have a pretty big customer base, so I can kind of manage the inflationary storm we're going through right now. and the high cost of paper and the constantly rising cost of postage. Somehow I have not raised, well, I temporarily once raised prices on it and then I went back because the original price was so ingrained in everything I've done, including hundreds of hours of interviews and stuff. Confusing the hell out of it. I kind of trapped myself. But I haven't even charged shipping for it, right? Instead, what I've been doing is just blocking certain countries from buying it all because it's just too expensive to get to them. But that said, that's part of the problem. That's kind of why I wish I was a video guy or an audio guy, because I would do it as that. I would have a membership site of some kind. And I would, and maybe there would be a print component to it at times if I wanted to, once in a while, but it would primarily be just video or audio based. Probably all in a mobile app. And I say that with a very biased perspective. I own a mobile app technology company, but that's because I'm seeing the future. 10 years from now, I don't think people will be mostly using membership sites the way they are now. I think they'll all be in people's phones. Entire info publishing businesses will be in the phones of your customer.
Wow.
And so I would, yeah. And like, for example, one of my customers, Daniel Throssell, has his all set up that way. He's like the prototype. He figured out a lot of stuff and he's doing it. And I would do it probably similar to that. Now he still has a print component, but it's not physically print. It's a PDF within the phone, right? And that people can read on the phone or the iPad, either way. But my point is that I would do something probably audio and video based, and probably not print, just because I even warned people on the very sales letter for Albembo Press. I'm like, look, I would not do this if I was doing this today. So I mean, you got to really want to do this. If you want to do it, it's fine. It's not impossible, but the game has changed logistically and economically, and it just is what it is. And maybe who knows? Maybe one day it'll get better, but I would not do it starting out today. I would do something else.
Right on. That makes a lot of sense, man. Do you think it will ever change back the other way, or do you think it's that ship sailed?
Yeah, I think it'll. I don't know when. I think this whole economy. My opinion is this entire economy, this economic system, is just going to crash upon its own weight. Like it can't sustain itself like this. I mean, we just lost. Didn't they just take the petrodollar? No more or whatever. I mean, there's so many changes going on right now that I think the United States is not going to look the way it does now 5 years from now, and maybe a completely different economy altogether. And I think reset is probably, it's like a forest, right? That overgrows, it needs to reset. And I think that's what'll happen. And who knows what'll happen beyond that? Politically, I have no idea. But I do think everyone should be prepared for some serious chaos, especially if you live in a big city.
Dang, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I've often heard you talk about being, I've heard you talk about being of utmost importance for people to really get to know their target market, and I know this is like, it feels like most problems start here, not knowing your target market, not as well as you think you do. Could you tell a story about a time you moved into a new niche and, some of the ways you focused on getting to know that market?
Yeah, I've been in many different niches in my day, and including having to be a cross-dressing copywriter, so to speak, where I had to write as a female. Okay, so that's a challenge, and that's what made me just want to sell to my own list to guys. I just focus on guys. Man, selling to women, that is a whole different game. I'm not cut out for it. But I'll give that as an example because that's the dramatic example, and it's, if I can figure it out, anybody can. And a lot of it really is, you have to gain an empathy for who you're writing to, right? So when I wrote to overweight females, I'm not an overweight female. Okay, so I am never going to know what it's like, no matter how much certain people think it can be done. I will never know what it's like to be a woman. Okay, I just won't. I will never know what it's like to give birth. I'll never know what it's like to bleed every month. Okay, and have the roller coaster of hormones, and I will never know. I will never know any of that, right? And I especially won't know all that combined with 50, 60, 70, 80 or more pounds of weight on them. A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, a result of past abuse, and it's all kinds of darkness that market goes through, right? So I bring all this up because it goes so far beyond just swipe file. Most people just say, well, just look at all the other ads and do what they're doing. And they're not wrong. Not really. I mean, technically it's better than nothing. You just better hope whoever you're copying did their homework, right? What we found out in the self-defense niche is the reason my client was bigger than all the other ones is because he was actually doing market research correctly. The other ones were actually going after very small segments of the market. He was going after the big segment that everyone was ignoring. So I bring all this up because what I did was I talked to the people in the market. I mean, physically, talked to them, family members, whoever I could, who's in that market, to just tell me what it's like. What is what's this feel like every day? Really, I wanted to know. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just writing this down for research. I really wanted to get in their head. And I would get answers like, well, there's like a perpetual sadness that they have, right? Now, it's not like everyone in the market, but this is the market I was writing to. There was a perpetual sadness. There's treachery and betrayal from friends who want to keep them that way, right? I'm telling you, man, it's a really, there's no way you can do a real study of the weight loss niche and not walk out with real empathy for them, right? And most people, I think, in that niche don't have any empathy. They just mercenaries. Well, I went in differently. I came in with this empathy. And then I would haunt the popular forums online where they were hanging out and just kind of be a fly on the wall and just read through the stories, just read through the thread. So this is old school forum software where you could kind of sort it by views and by comments. So you could see which were the hot discussions going back years. And I mean, you just see patterns over and over and over of treachery and betrayal and false friendships. Like it goes so far beyond just the lost weight. It's weird. It's like, it's really not the weight that's the problem. People lose weight, right? They lose weight. They figure that out. It's what's keeping them back from it. Because you find out in that market that it's a carousel. You just go from one solution to the next, to the next, to the next. And everyone takes that opinion. Every marketer just accepts that as how it should be. And they're just thinking like marketers. Well, I'll get this one-time sale, or I'll sell as much of these pills as I can, and I know they'll move on, and I'll just generate new leads. That's a marketing first approach. I don't like that approach. I get no fulfillment from that approach. I don't even think about the money at this point. It's like, okay, how can I serve this market, these people in this market? What can I do for these people to improve their lives? And you ask these questions and you start digging deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to know that market as well as they know themselves. And it's funny because in the next month email players that you actually talk a lot about this, where you take on the role almost of a method actor, where it's like you actually become part of that market and you start thinking with their thought pattern. It's a very weird experience. I'm going to tell anybody, it's a very weird experience. You start bringing on their thought patterns. You start talking like them and you do it only for as long as you have to. So it's like Leonard Nimoy when he was playing Spock in Star Trek.
Right.
He said this was his experience. 5 days a week, he was Spock. He was in character. And even after the week was over, that Saturday, he's still Spock. He's at home. He's talking to his mom or his wife like he's Spock. He thinks like Spock. He can't just drop he's Spock for all intents and purposes. His speech patterns are Spock. Probably drove his family crazy. He said it wasn't until Sunday night when Leonard Nimoy finally came back. And then, of course, Monday he's back in the studio again. That's kind of how you got to take that approach. You got to become one of them, and whatever way that means. And I've done it with the weight loss niche. I've done it with the work at home niche. I've done it with the golf niche because I didn't know shit about golf when I first got in there. My only experience with golf was playing the old NES Nintendo golf game. That's it. Like I knew how to keep score. Miniature golf. And I had to go out and start playing golf. And it took one time playing golf to realize how absolutely freaking frustrated these guys are. It's like, and you have this little like synapse goes off in your brain, and suddenly you are like, yes, I get this market now. There's like, awesome. It changes everything. It doesn't change the offer. It doesn't change the promises or the claims. What it does is it changes the subtext of the sales copy, where there's more going on underneath the surface than what it looks like. And people in that market pick up on it because you're one of them. And you could do this. I did this in the people with prostate problems niche. Of course, My family member, it's like plagues my family and all that. So I kind of got in that initiative for my own. I could figure out how to deal with it before it became a problem. Because I had that problem when I was actually kind of young. I was like, oh, this is not good. And so, one time after another, you just got to become one with them. And you cannot rush the process. And I'm telling you, your copy, I defy you to do this and not write better, more responsive, more engaging sales copy, emails, whatever it is, because you're not just a copywriter. You're one of them, and they'll feel it. And it's a very interesting experience.
Dude, see that right there, that's part of the genius of Ben Settle, because like I've been doing this for a while, but not as long as you, but I've been doing it for a while, and I've never thought about getting to know a niche and comparing that to method acting. That's amazing, dude. That's genius.
Well,
I love that, man.
If you like that, there's a book. I believe I did not invent this. There's a book by a guy named Denny Hatch called Method Marketing, and it's all about this.
Wow.
And I don't remember much of the book. I just remember the concept, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating. And I have one of my email player subscribers is one of the world's best, like top method acting coaches, teachers. His name is Brian Timoney, and he's taught me a lot about this too. So, you start, and I'm asking, like, God, there's a lot. This is some really good stuff for customer research because, like, for example, if you're writing an ad about somebody, and let's say the client is kind of boring, they're not like the most interesting character in the world. Right. Well, if you dig deep enough, you'll find a backstory, and the backstory has nothing to do with the product you're selling, most likely, right? It very little. It's kind of like Val Kilmer when he was playing Iceman in Top Gun, where he said the script didn't give me anything, so I just invented this backstory for him where he was always trying to get the approval of his father. And you're like, holy shit. Now, if you watch Top Gun, you see it in every scene he's in. Now, it's not spoken. It does nothing to change the plot. It does nothing to change anything directly. But if you look at his body language, how he talks, his attitude, the way he presents that character, it adds so much more depth to it than would have been there. And no other actor would have played that part, I don't think, like him as a result. And I think you take that, you dig and you dig and you dig. Like I just, like in the work at home niche, this client, okay, the chick, okay, there's the tale of woe, right? I have kids, I lost my job, I need a paycheck from home. You dig, and you're like, wait a minute. All of her friends were telling her to get divorced. She shouldn't even be divorced, but her idiot friends were telling her to get divorced to a perfectly nice guy who was providing for her. And there's a frustration there. And of course, she's not going to take responsibility for this frustration, but it's there. And it's in the subtext, and it's there in between the lines. And it never comes out, and there's no lecture, there's no judging or anything like that, but it's a frustration that the market feels. And I'm telling you, if you just take this attitude to every ad you write, every email you write, it changes everything. It's not even changing fundamentally anything, but like at a molecular level, DNA level. And I don't know, I think it's very fascinating.
That's smart, dude. That's super smart, man. I love that. You know what? I had another question for you about target market, but I really think you have answered that, man. I think that you've given people more than enough information they need to get to know their target market for sure. I guess what I would say now, and this wasn't on my list, but I'm just going to break my list a little bit here, and I'll just ask you, man. One direction I was going to go with reading some of your stuff is I haven't gotten into your fiction yet. And I was just wondering if you wanted to take a minute to speak on some of your fiction. I know you wrote Zombie Cop, and I think you're up to 9 books on that one, right? Or 8 books?
No, it's a 9-book series, and it's finished. And I recently, I'm talking about 3 days ago, as of the time of this recording, I just put Zombie Cop for free in the Enoch Wars mobile app.
What?
So it's in there free as an ebook, an audio book, and then I put the screenplay I wrote in there too. And so that's that. If you want to see that, it's emailplayers.com/Enoch Wars. It may just take you there if you just go to Enoch Wars, actually, now that I think about it. But either way, it's free in the app. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I put writing tips in there and all kinds of stuff.
And I'll put a link to that in the description of this interview as well, man. That's awesome, dude. That's really cool. What got you what got you to decide to make a screenplay and go with that? That's awesome, dude. What made you decide to do that?
I've been wanting to do one since 1993. So that tells you how much it literally took me 30 years to do it, because I always found the topic fascinating. And in 1993, I wrote a couple research papers on the topic, but I'm like one of these guys that never actually wrote a screenplay. And then when I got last year, I don't know, I just had this bug. I'm like, why not? Like, I don't care if this thing ever gets made to a movie. It's like, Hollywood can burn to the ground for all I care. I just want to do it, right? Because the experience, right? It's a new experience. And so I spent a month or two doing it, and I turned the first novel into a screenplay. And then the funniest thing happened, not very funny for me, but probably to others. I wrote the screenplay where you kind of have to strip out all the fluff from the story. There's just no room for anything else. And I said, holy crap, this screenplay is way better than the novel. So I spent the last week of December just rewriting the entire novel from scratch from the screenplay, and edited it in January. And it's taken us a while to get the new audiobook recorded and the new book edited. And I realized, you know what, I'm just going to put this for free in a mobile app. This is the gateway drug to my Enoch Wars series. That's what it's my opt-in, so to speak. Because if people read that and they like it, they'll go buy the other ones, right? And this makes everything a lot more accessible. It's a story that I'm not ashamed to send my mother now, because the first version was very disturbing. Like, I don't know where my mind was when I wrote the first version. It's not a very good place, apparently. And it's more accessible now to the average. Like, it has its fans, don't get me wrong, but they're probably as broken as I was. So now it's accessible to I think it's way better, for one thing, but it's also more accessible. And now it's free in the app if someone wants to read it.
Dude, that's the first time I heard you talking about this. You were writing about this, I think, in an email, and I was thinking, oh man, he's about to George Lucas this thing. I haven't even read it yet.
Oh, I totally did. I totally George Lucas this thing. And I understand George Lucas, why he does that. Art never really is finished, right? And it's so funny, because just 2 days ago, during this sale of a book I'm selling as of today, actually, today's the last day of the sale, I got a reply from this person on my list. I don't know who she is. And she's like, are you I forget the name of the author, Sarah Moss, something like that. Sarah Moss, I think, fan. Because she wrote this book with the character Azrael, because that's the name of the character in my book, Azrael, Azriel. And she goes, oh, because I'm using that as a discount code this week for this other book. And I said, I've never heard of this, ever. And she's like, oh, well, he writes these books, and he has a character named Azrael. He's like a heartthrob. It's like a YA book. And I'm like, first of all, I went and looked it up. My book came out years before this other one did. So let the record show.
Right on.
I actually have an email going. I actually write about this in my email for tomorrow. So it's kind of funny we're talking about this. But yeah, it is what it is.
Hey, man, listen, you've been extremely generous with your time, Ben. I appreciate you, man. Where can people go if they want to jump on your list? I recommend everybody jump on this man's list, see what he's got to say about things. Where do you want to send them, Ben?
Just go to bensettle.com and you can opt into my list. And if you do, you'll get the first issue as a PDF of Email Players. And you also get access to the mobile app, which has some like audio and video content in it. And that's at bensettle.com.
Right on. Hey, thanks a lot, everybody. Ben, thanks so much for your time. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, everybody.